about you, but I was totally inspired and nourished by the performance. How about one more round of applause for inspiring me? You know, my name is Melvin Butler. I'm a professor in the music department here at the University of Chicago. I'm also a saxophonist, a musician. And so I approached this part of the evening, in a sense, with mixed feelings. I feel like after hearing the music and experiencing it this way, there's not much that can compare. We've all been witness to one particular mode of communication, of expression, and then to break it down into words in some sense seems to almost reduce it, or is an attempt anyway, to gain clarity about the creative process. But my hope is that it can be productive for us as well. We get to hear the musicians talk a little bit about what they do, and we're going to pose some rather grand questions about creativity and improvisation. And for me, this is a real treat. I had Denis and Joaquin visit my class just on Tuesday, and I got a chance to sit in with them and perform. And so it was great meeting them and performing with them. Marquise and I, we actually worked together in the band of Matt Guillory. I guess that was about 2 or 3 years ago. This is the first time I'm meeting the living legend himself, Mr. Ari Brown. A real treat for me as a saxophone player. And Jeff Parker, I've known since 1988 or 89. We were students at Berklee College of Music together back in Boston. I think Jeff was the first guitar player in the first band I ever had. So it's really neat to be in this sort of environment. You never know how life is going to take you, across various bridges, to bring the bridge metaphor back. So I am a saxophonist, a tenor and soprano saxophonist. And so I approached this first question really both as a musician and as a scholar, as an ethnomusicologist. And basically the question is about the meaning of creativity. Right? It's a word that we throw around an awful lot, both I think in performance circles, but also in academic ones. We're trying to grasp what do we mean by creative music, creative musicians. I recently came across a review, Mr. Brown, of one of your most recent recordings, actually the one from this year. And the reviewer said something about, I think the exact words were that Ari Brown is keeping alive the creative rigor of Chicago jazz, right? So there we have it again, creative rigor, creative musicians. And as musicians and scholars, we're kind of acutely aware of a huge tradition of jazz performance or improvised music, right? So there's so much that's come before, and we're often keenly aware of this. So I mean, in light of the tradition of improvised music, so much has been said already. And so I guess, thinking about the weight of that tradition, I'm prompted to ask, what does it mean to be creative? Is creativity truly possible? It's often discussed in terms of being an innovator or doing something new. And so I just wonder if maybe some of you might like to comment on this term creativity or the idea of creative music. What does it mean to be creative? What does creativity mean for you as improvisers?
I think being creative is taking the total of your experiences and turning those experiences into a thought, a feeling with whoever you're playing with. Because when you play with different musicians, you play different. You play with rocky musicians, jazz musicians, blues, everything. Everybody had their own identity, sound, their own sound. For me, I started with the AECM. Well, before that, I accidentally got in a band playing saxophone with these soul guys. We were doing Midnight Hour, and all those kind of things. But I didn't know anything about the music at that time. Through my different experiences, I played a lot of soul music. I was in a lot of house bands, and then hanging out with Ross Mitchell, Joseph Jarman, Henry Threadgill, I got a chance to be around the avant-garde music. And then later on, I got with Ken Chaney's and a whole bunch of different people. But anyway, the basic thing that I'm saying is that these different people that you play with give you different ideas about how to play, what to play, and mostly when you play, you get an idea of what is cool and what's not cool, and what you want to make better, you know. But it's all in the moment, you know. Especially when you're doing the kind of music that we play today, you know. For me, I just try to find something that makes sense, you know, and it would make sense at different times. It may be something funny. It might be a certain tonal area that sounds cool at a particular time, a certain rhythmic feeling. Creative is kind of just doing things on the spurs, like when you're cooking, when you're talking and having conversation. You know, you don't plan what you're going to say. You know, you just react, and also you charge ahead on your own. So creative, just utilizing what you know.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of RE. I think being creative, especially in this context, is about in the moment. If we were to take a half an hour break and come and play another set of music, it would be completely different because that moment is different from the moment we just had. Yeah, and when I'm approaching this music, for me, playing free music or a spontaneous composition, it's all about evoking some type of emotion to me, and being in the moment. Yeah.
Anybody else want to comment? Yes, sir.
I don't really have anything to add to that. So I totally agree with Marcus and Harry also. It's a very particular context that we just played because we just meeting each other and exchange. It's like if we were having a conversation actually. So what means being creative in that sense, as Marcus said, is really being totally into the moment and, as Ari said, like transforming his feeling and his own experience into something actual, like sound.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally. Yeah, it's about, I mean, kind of like staying in the moment. I mean, for me, being creative it's also like experimenting, you know. I mean, it's got like definitely trying new things, like more trying to tap into the more the things you don't know, you know. Yeah. So you can keep moving and keep expanding.
Je vais parler français. Et après, peut-être que traduira. Bien sûr, je vais dire, je suis d'accord avec tout ce qui a été dit. Comme c'est parti de là-bas, c'était facile ici. Moi, je me mets toujours, quand je pars dans une improvisation, j'essaie de retrouver ce sentiment d'enfant, quand je suis petit, que je sais rien, et je m'assois derrière la batterie comme si c'était la première fois que je jouais de la batterie, et j'essaye d'ouvrir mes oreilles comme si j'étais un enfant et que j'allais découvrir la vie. C'est peut-être une métaphore, quelque chose comme ça, mais c'est un peu ce sentiment que j'ai. Donc à partir du moment où je suis un enfant qui est quand même adulte, j'ai des clés pour comprendre, fermer des portes ou ouvrir, m'y intéresser quand quelqu'un joue, de rentrer avec lui, de partir dans des improvisations et des idées comme ça créatives. Il y a aussi la place des instruments qui est particulière pour moi dans l'improvisation. La percussion, c'est aussi un élément qui a une libérateur pour moi, ça m'a libéré de la percussion et de l'improvisation, plus que d'être batteur au sens du tempo. Ça m'a ouvert des possibilités mélodiques, harmoniques.
So then he said that being creative for him, it's like being a child. So it's always the first, in a way, of course, it's always the first time when he starts playing, he starts improvising. It's like a child who opens his eyes or opens his ears for the first time and discover life. So he's got the possibility through improvisation to be in that position many times. But of course he's pretty much aware that he is a grown-up child, a child adult. So he also has keys, and with those keys he's able to open or close doors, to pay attention to what others do, or not pay attention to what they do, to make decisions like that. So that's how he will define creativity for himself, and also as a percussionist, because also the kind of instruments you play is important, of course. He knows that playing free percussion set him free as an improviser, not being tied only to the obvious reasons.
Can I ask a quick follow-up? And I know we don't have all night. I could sit here all night and talk to these musicians. I really like the image of a child discovering the world, right? And as the father of a 21-month-old toddler, I see him create things all of the time, right? And sometimes creation can become destruction, right? Sometimes, he's experimenting and playing with the world around him, but, I'm constantly having to be careful and making sure he doesn't break this or knock over the computer like he did the other week. So I guess I wonder, if creation ever becomes destruction, because the challenge I see it is that individually you are creative musicians, but then I was very much aware of the fact, watching you all perform, that you're creating as a group as well, right? So is there a tension for anyone, what do you think about this relationship between individual creativity and group creativity?
Probably look at the Bears.
The Chicago Bears, I assume you were making reference to the fact that they've got a lot of individually talented players, but sometimes coming together as a team doesn't work out so well.
Everybody got to do their part at the right time.
I think in terms of individual creativity in this type of setting, at least the way I approach it, everything that I'm playing, even when I consider myself taking a solo or being at the front of in the spotlight in the moment, everything that I'm playing, I'm always thinking about what's happening around me. So, to a certain extent, they're kind of the same. They're one.
For me, your question is really joining the second question that is on the paper, which means, what about freedom? What about freedom in art, freedom in music, and freedom, like my own freedom versus his own, and what's going on if everybody wants to be free at the same time. It's the same thing for the society also. In French we say, la liberté des uns s'arrête où commence celle des autres. The freedom of some people just stops when some others start, something like that. But I think, for me, in music, it's more about feeling free. I don't need to be like totally free. I don't actually want to, because maybe I wouldn't know what to play. But if I feel free, just like tonight, I think, it's just great. I mean, because I know what to play, and feels good, and it's totally new, and it will be totally different than what we're gonna do tomorrow or the day before.
I think that's a bad term, free jazz, because, nothing's free and nothing's really new, not really. more or less refers to free from the constraints of time, harmony, and, rhythm, melody. Most songs we do, like, autumn leaves, soft, they have chord changes, and they go according to, either swing or Latin or whatever, But when we improvise avant-garde or whatever you want to call it, creative music, it's just not free. It's just, you have thoughts, but it doesn't have to be to a certain time, chord changes, harmonic system. It's devoid of all that predetermined. It's not predetermined.
I think we moved into the second question, so Alexandre, I'll let you continue.
You want to add something about the child? I think in a way it's just Ari just answered that. The question was the question of freedom. Maybe we can move directly to the next one so that we can open the session to Q&A too. And that third question was more about, quite often improvisers say that they play, they sound like they are who they are. And if a famous phrase of Charlie Parker, if you don't live your life, it won't come out of your home. So be yourself, and and express that in the music when you improvise. So the question was about: is there also sometimes, are there times where you also discover things when you play music that you will be able to use in life? It's a topic Alexandre was very interested in. It's like, okay, there are all the things you learn from life and that you translate into music when you improvise creatively, let's say. But are there also moments, things, processes, that you discover in the music and then after that you can use in other areas in life?
Still talking about freedom, I think it's a very good example, because maybe I first tried to play free music before feeling the need to be free in my life, if you know what I mean. So once you do it in arts, you realize that it's so important to feel free also in your life and decide things really by yourself or with the people you love.
I think it gets to a point, especially when you're playing this type of music, where the things you create musically that often go hand in hand with things that are happening in your life. I learn something every day, about myself through creating music. Discipline is one thing that I like to apply to my everyday life that I've learned from creating music on the trumpet. The trumpet is an extremely difficult instrument, and it takes discipline. So I apply that exact same concept to my life. Being patient, in a context like this, when we're playing free or spontaneous composition, not playing too much at times, being patient with yourself musically, I apply that to my life. So I think they go hand in hand.
Je suis d'accord avec Marquis sur tout ce qu'il vient de dire, parce que nos expériences de vie personnelles, la mienne en particulier, depuis 30 ou 40 ans, je fais de la musique, et je n'ai pas fait que de la musique improvisée, j'ai fait beaucoup d'autres formes de musique plus écrites, disons. Mais je pense aussi que j'ai attendu beaucoup d'années pour pouvoir me sentir libre. En grandissant, de toute façon, je crois qu'on devient de plus en plus libre. La vie aussi nous apprend à lâcher prise sur beaucoup de choses. Et pour improviser dans la vie, c'est comme dans la musique, c'est-à-dire c'est un moment de survie. Je crois qu'on cherche à travers l'improvisation la vie, tout simplement, quelque chose qui nous relie avec quelque chose de très fondamental, mystique peut-être pour certains, religieux pour d'autres, je sais pas. Il y a quelque chose qui touche pour moi à quelque chose de spirituel, quoi. Mais peut-être parce que c'est le temps qui m'a permis d'en arriver là dans ma vie. Là, c'est compliqué.
So, then he's playing, I've been playing music, and not just improvised music. For the last 30 or 40 years, he's got a lot of different experiences. But what he knows is that it took him years to start feeling free. And he thinks that in a way you can really start to feel free only with time. For him, meaning exactly, he learned to let it go in the music. He was not able to do that before, and that's something that the music taught him. So that's where he was arguing in the process described by Marcus. It's a way, first, sometimes it's really like surviving in a way. First, when you play this kind of music, and you move from wanting to survive to wanting to just live life to the fullest extent in a way. So that's why maybe to some extent also it's a little bit mystical. Some will call it mystical, some will call it spiritual, this process.
So was that a question for the musicians, or should we open it up at this point? Maybe.
I think we have a late start of the discussion. Maybe we should open to your questions.
I have a question. This is coming from someone who knows nothing, almost nothing about music. Is there a visual component to your work? All of you.
So yeah, the question was, is there a visual component to your work? And she said, this is a question coming from someone who knows nothing about music. A good question, nonetheless.
Moi, je comprends pas trop bien la question par rapport à...
Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose de visuel dans ce que je vous fais?
I think they want to know if meaning working with visual artists or seeing things while they improvise. Seeing things, ouais, est-ce que
Oui, personnellement, je ne vois rien, à part le musicien avec qui je joue. J'essaye de regarder beaucoup Jeff, je regardais beaucoup et c'est eux qui m'inspirent, mon regard est là-dedans. Alors après, dans des expériences, bien sûr, d'improvisation, on peut travailler avec des arts plastiques, avec des formes autres que la musique, mais pas dans ce genre de contexte pour moi. J'ai pas de vision, à part les gens que je regarde, qui sont importants pour moi.
So, no, he doesn't see nothing. When he opens his eyes, it is to watch the musicians he plays with. And that's the only thing he does. Now, of course, you can also improvise and have experiences with visual artists, and work with them, but that's a different thing. For this kind of music like they play tonight, for Dennis the answer, no, he doesn't know.
I got some books on it, but I haven't got to read them yet.
At times when I play, to answer your question, for me, yes, at times. It depends. When I'm creating specifically tonight, there were specific moments where I saw visual things, or I would think of a phrase, or for instance, colors. I would see a color. One specific moment, Jeff was playing something, and I was seeing yellow, so I tried to mimic yellow on my horn, Just little things like that to help me be creative and help me create. So I would say yes, to a certain extent. For me, there is.
Does it have anything to do with, some people, like, they have the absolute ear, so that they see colors while they hear some notes? Is that your case?
Not for me. I more so use it as a kind of a guide to help me create. If I think of blue, try to mimic blue, how would blue sound on the trumpet? I know there's musicians like Stefan Harris, a great vibraphonist. He sees chord changes in color. chorus. I wish I could do that, you know. Then you can start to associate, oh, this is a minor chord, you know, I see red or something, so.
I mean, for me, I tend to think, I mean, especially in like a more improvised setting, I tend to think of things in layers. Like I'll hear sound in layers, like in blocks and fragments, and also with the especially specific to the guitar. Like I'll think more in terms of shapes, like shapes and like panoramas, you know, stacking things. So yes.
But also, when you played your harmonics, for example, it seemed that there was a suggestion of tonality with the other musicians that were performing. So to my mind, as a musician, it means that it wouldn't matter whether you're coming from a diatonic sense or an atonal sense. You're still coming from a tonal sense as far as when you play your harmonics. So that sets up another tonality with the other musicians that are playing. Still in layers, I can agree. But do you understand what I'm saying from that perspective?
Yeah, totally.
I kind of look at colors, it's basically two shades for me, and that's light and dark. And you know, certain modes, they have a dark feeling. Some other modes have a light feeling. So I go between light and dark.
I heard that when you played the blues scale in one of the parts that you playing to where the trumpet player used the stagnant line against that.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions from the audience?
Marquise, I've heard your name. Marquise talked about evoking feelings for you or the audience.
Okay, yeah. Primarily for me, to help me create, you know, if the ensemble is playing something around me that evokes a sad feeling, so I'm going to try to evoke something to match with them. Or if like I said, if I feel I'm in the position where I'm in the spotlight or I'm leading the group improvisation, if I want to change the color or change the mood, say, okay, I want to provoke, you know, I want to think of the phrase powerful, I want to think liberated. Just evoking these different emotions through my horn and try to convey them to the audience, yeah.
Based on the evolution of music going from classical to jazz, you know, swing, all these different things, what do you guys feel like you're talking about dark style jazz will lead? You know, it's something new for me. I'm a musician. That's always been a really weird thing to kind of, you know, to grasp myself. So do you think it would ever get to a point where it may, you know, do the full circle back to, you know, something that everybody can appreciate, or do you think we'll just continue down my music path that it's going?
Great question.
Great question.
Really good question.
Right, so the question was about, for lack of a better term, avant-garde jazz, and where it might be heading. I think it's a fascinating question as well. If I just to add something to it, right? It suggests that there's a kind of progression, you know, right, from the jazz of yesteryear to perhaps the things that musicians are doing in 2014, and then trying to imagine where we might be musically in another few years, 10 years, 20 years. Where are we going? Is this going somewhere, in fact? Perhaps is the question we need to even ask before that, right? Is music developing? Is it moving forward? or in any, or backwards, or in a cyclical kind of way? What do you see that lies ahead?
It's hard to answer that question, but I will say that in recent times I'm starting to see aspects of free music in more mainstream jazz. So I would say that that's a good sign. I think regardless of the genre, everyone wants to feel free playing. Even if I'm playing a bebop tune, I still want to feel free. So I think the concept of, feeling free is definitely starting to show in more modern jazz.
It's not every place you can play free. Only certain places and very few places. So the majority of the time, for musicians who want to pay their bills and eat, they have to do more, public approved music. And because I like to sometimes, I play a lot of different type, tunes, and I kind of, from my not rock and roll, but from my soul background, I have this affinity to want people to feel my music. And so a lot of times I don't play as so-called free music as much as I would like to. I don't want to play it all night because I like different things, But I like to have aspects of it in my group. And that's the whole thing, playing with different people, play, according to what's happening, But if my own group and Marquis group, it sounds more identical to what you're feeling, But don't leave the music out. Don't leave the avant-garde music out because it's all good and it's meaningful, because I remember Moo Hall and all the guys when they started the ACM. They got tired of playing, all these bebop songs and so forth, And it was a big battle. It was a big. Actually, it was a lot of hatred between the avant-garde musicians and the more established musicians. They didn't want. I remember a lot of times I went hung out with Roscoe, and they didn't want him to play because, he was avant-garde. They didn't like what he was doing. I liked it. I was having a good time. I could see on their faces they didn't want him to play. They didn't want him to play long. But this, that's the way it is sometimes, And I think that a lot of people are more accepting now than they were back then. I'm thinking about back in the 60s, That's, somebody told me about that.
There's a question here. Okay.
Do you find I'm sure there's a global market for it. Do you find it more acceptable in different parts of the globe? Like, are you more in tune with, say, the Far East because of the dissonance and discordance of the music? Are they more inclined to accept your music as opposed to America and European genres?
Yeah, just to repeat the question, right? The question has to do, I think, with it's about the global reception of this kind of jazz. The example that was given was, for example, in a cultural context in which people are more accustomed to particular kinds of dissonance in their music, right? Might they be more receptive to this particular kind of improvised music that you're playing, as opposed to, say, an audience in the United States? Do you notice differences according to cultural context, for example?
I think the European audience more knowledgeable about the artists and about American Americans are. It used to be that way. I think it's becoming more even keeled now. But when I first started going to Europe, and the people, you know, I was kind of new on the scene, and they knew some things about me already. And they were quiet at the concerts. You know, they had respect for the music. There wasn't a whole lot of talking, you know, most of the time. And but I think the American audience is getting more accepting. It's still avant-garde. It's hard for most people to really deal with. It's a small number of fans of the music. You know, it's not like you know, Rolling Stones. You know, it's nothing like that. You know, it's a small group of people that you know, and that's the way it is. It's a small group that really support the music. You know, in any country, and there's very few places where avant-garde musician can perform his music. So it's kind of hard, you know. I think it's kind of a bad scene right now. I don't think it's well. I take it back. I'm talking, and I haven't really thought about this real good, but the fact that Alexandre's been doing what he's doing, that's helping the cause of it, you know, and I think that's good.
I don't know if Denis or Joachim, do you want to give us a kind of French perspective on this issue?
Je pense que depuis maintenant pas mal d'années, les liens se sont créés avec beaucoup de musiciens en Europe, pas uniquement vis-à-vis du jazz, de la musique afro-américaine, mais vis-à-vis aussi de certaines traditions. Moi qui suis méditerranéen, j'ai beaucoup travaillé avec beaucoup de gens sur l'Italie, le Maghreb, l'Afrique, ces pays-là. Et je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de chemins qui sont créés depuis une quinzaine, vingtaine d'années maintenant. Il y a beaucoup de trains qui sont passés. Et moi j'ai eu la chance de rentrer dans beaucoup de ces endroits-là, et d'avoir pris beaucoup de trains. Et je pense qu'un musicien, il doit voyager beaucoup, il doit faire beaucoup d'expériences pour comprendre et apprendre. Et je pense que la liberté vient de là, peut-être à un moment donné. Pour ce qui concerne l'avant-garde, je ne me suis jamais senti un musicien d'avant-garde en tant que tel, parce qu'en Europe et en France, ce mot-là n'existe pas vraiment, ou a une connotation qui est plutôt négative pour beaucoup de gens. Moi, je dis souvent que j'improvise de la musique, et non pas que je fais de la musique improvisée. Ça veut dire que je peux me servir aussi de matériaux traditionnels, qui peuvent aussi être dans mes tambours africains, ou indien, ou autre chose, je ne sais pas quoi d'ailleurs. Et puis, dans mon parcours aussi de musicien, je suis venu ici en 2011, déjà jouer avec Watershed, avec Nicole Mitchell, avec Tommy Carey, Bernard Santa Cruz et Anna John Taylor, sur des formes musicales plus écrites, disons, mélodiques. Et ça me permet aussi de peut-être plus voyager avec la musique quand on a des formes écrites. C'est très étrange pour moi. C'est-à-dire que des contrats d'engagement se font plus facilement sur des musiques écrites, enregistrées et vendues que sur des musiques improvisées. Mais je pense que c'est des endroits de résistance et qu'il faut qu'on puisse, nous, continuer à être ensemble et résister, parce que sinon le monde ne va pas aller très bien.
So there have been many roads, many paths taken by all kinds of artists in the last 10, 15 years, maybe many trains. And to stay with that metaphor, Don is saying that he had the opportunity to take a lot of those trains in his life, in his musical life, in the last 15 years or so. Because it's really about traveling. It's only when you travel that you understand and learn better, and then maybe feel free, as we all said before. As the expression avant-garde in Europe, it has more or less the same meaning, but it's a bad meaning. because it scares people, you know. So that's why Denis is used to say that he improvises music, not that he plays improvised music, because by that he means he is free, again, feeling free, to use all kinds of traditions and techniques in his playing, in his drumming, you know, things he has learned because he got interested in African music, in Indian music, and that he's able to translate. He doesn't refuse those influences in his playing. He came to Chicago first time 2 years ago with another ensemble, and in that ensemble, even if they were also improvising, of course, there were also compositions, scores. In a way, it was easier also to sell such a band, but in another way, he doesn't have the feeling that he traveled as much as when he totally improvises. And again, as he said, travels means freedom, means learning and understanding, you know. So it's not about the expression avant-garde, but what we think is for sure is that there are things to be discovered when you travel like that. And in the world like the world it is today, it's like a spirit of resistance. And if we don't resist with creative practices, opening practices like this, where do we go?
Wow, maybe that's a good note on which to call this to a close. I know the hour is getting late. Wow, I don't know if we need to make an announcement about the next Bridge concert.
May 2.
May 2nd, we have a date.
Here.
Right here in the Logan Penthouse 901. So this has been absolutely fantastic. I think a lot of the thank yous have already been conveyed, but let me also reiterate all of those. I won't try to name all the names, but Dan is here. Alexandre, thank you so much. All the musicians, how about one more round of applause for them? Thank you. Thank you all for coming.